America is the worst in the world, by far the worst in the world in health span. Most people don't think about this. We're 39th in the world in longevity. Moving 15 minutes every hour is more important than 3 hours of exercise a day.
Welcome to Start With a Win, where we unpack franchising, leadership, and business growth. Let's go. Coming to you from Area 15 Ventures and Start With a Win headquarters, it's Adam Contos. We have this amazing two-part episode. This is part 2 of 2 with Blair LaCorte, a dynamic business leader who's dove really deep into longevity. I'm a big fan of living longer myself. I think this is really important. So let's get back into it. Blair shares the 5 secrets to longevity and some things you can do with each of those. Let's get into it. You're in longevity now. And I'm seeing this becoming more prolific, especially in leadership circles. So, I'm former CEO. Actually, I'm CEO of another company right now also. And I'm huge into self-care, longevity, making sure that, I'm 53. What is 73 or 83 going to look like? I hope it's going to look really good. But, the reality is it's an important part of leader society. And a lot of people are very interested in it. Talk to us a little bit about the progression in longevity that you're seeing, and where do you think we're going with this?
Sure. It is in vogue. And the good news is that it's in vogue because people are starting to appreciate it. The bad news is in vogue because America is the worst in the world, by far the worst in the world in health span. Most people don't think about this. We're 39th in the world in longevity. Okay, we're behind Cuba. Well, that sucks. But we're 39th in the world out of 192 countries. Maybe we'll move our way up. But the reality is longevity is a false metric, because if you look at what we're number 1 in, it's dying. Okay, a genetically advantaged person is 0.5%, and if you didn't get it, you didn't get it. Has an immune system that can invent itself very, very quickly. They live to somewhere between 95 and 100. And you always say, they were great. They didn't decline until the last year. And then they fell down. And then a year later, they died. Okay. That is winning the lottery. Okay. That is what we should want, that our health span is very close to our lifespan. The problem in America is that the average age now is 74 blended between men and women, which means that, men are a little bit less, and that we start to decline 14 years before we die. So it means by around 58 for a man and around 60 as a woman. And there is some studies coming out now that women actually start to decline at the same point. They decline longer. So maybe they are at 58. At that point, the average American, we're number 1 in the world at this slow death, which is we start to get chronic inflammation diseases. Okay, Buck Institute, where I'm the vice chair, we invented geroscience and longevity. We've been doing it for 30 years before it was vogue. We've been doing it horizontally. And the conclusion we came to many, many years ago was that aging is a horizontal disease based on your system breaking down. And the best indicator is chronic inflammation, which means that your immune system is turned on for too long and it gets tired. Okay. And what does that cause? It causes misreplications in cancer. It causes diabetes. It causes arthritis. It causes dementia. They are all chronic inflammation based. We used to argue when I was in investing, we invested in a bunch of biotech companies. Does illness cause inflammation? Yes, it does. Does inflammation cause illness? Absolutely. Chronic inflammation is what actually drives illness. So when you take a look at this whole idea around health span, we wait until we break, where when we treat it, it's got the highest cost and the lowest outcomes. So let me give you one example of something everyone on your show should do. And when I say it, you'll say, well, of course I should do that. You should actually figure out if chronic inflammation is the biggest cause of aging and breakdown in the body, then what causes chronic inflammation? Well, one of the things that causes it is a glucose absorption and glucose spikes. And you say, oh, well, I don't like that. Well, I'm not going to eat sugar. Well, when you go pick a diet, whether it's a keto diet or it's a paleo diet or whatever it is, those diets, you don't know whether they're good for you or not. The way you'd figure it out is you'd put a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, on your arm. And you do it for 15 days and you log in what you ate. And then you'd watch how your body absorbed and broke down different foods at different times of the day. And you'd wait a month and you go back and you do it again. And you'll say to me, "Oh my God, Blair, thank you for telling me that this wonderful technology exists that I could actually figure out what diet is better for me." right? Well, it's been around for a long time. And the reason it's been around for a long time is because we put a ton of money into it for diabetics. Every diabetic wears a CGM because once you're broken, I can sell you something. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a conspiracy theory. You now want to care about your health. And all of a sudden, you're scared. You've got diabetes and you buy this thing from me. But why don't we use it before we get sick? Because we can avoid diabetes if we actually control our glucose beforehand. That's a perfect example of how we actually can help our body avoid chronic inflammation and therefore avoid aging. Almost everything we've shown before 55 years old, you can have an influence on. So the other thing that people say is, look, it's all. I don't want to get my genome done because I don't want to know. When you get your genome done, 7% of your health is impacted by your base notes of your genome. When you write a song, the notes are not what you copyright. It's the melody, it's the entire thing, right? You may have the same notes. It will be a very different song depending on how you actually produce that song. So the notes themselves, only 1% of them are things that are probably really, really difficult. The other 6%, if your genetics says you're predisposed, you can actually do things to stop yourself from getting those illnesses. It's called phenomics. It's called expression of your genes. So 93% of everything that happens to you in aging and in sickness, you actually control. How do you control it? There's only 5 things that we know of, the 5 big things that we know of that actually impact your life, and none of them are hard. And I could give people on the podcast. I'll tell you what the 5 things are if you're interested, and I'll give you 2 things in each. Right. But they're much simpler because at the end of the day, we're just a machine, okay? And we're a machine that is an N of 1. So every time someone says your cholesterol should be this, they're lying to you. It's impossible. They did a study back in 1972 because beauty was thought to be normal. Like the most normal person would look the most beautiful because everyone's brain would say, oh, he looks the most like things I like. And therefore, they couldn't find anyone who was normal because everyone is different. You had a normal nose, but your ears weren't normal, right? The same thing happens in medicine. We're all N of 1, which means we are a unique system. So, for instance, someone could ask me about almost anything you see in the news today, and I'll bring you back to the basic research. And what I'll tell you is, of course, saunas are good. It's called heat shock. What is heat shock? Most people's bodies are designed so that your brain doesn't boil and your organs don't boil if you're in the desert, to burn brown fat around those things so that it protects the brain and the organs. And it releases beautiful chemicals to rebalance your body, to try to save you until you can get out of that heat. Now, that is a basic fact, and we have all the research that shows that that's true. But now you ask me the second question. We know it's good, but how good is it for you? For some people, a cold bath where you dry blood into the organ and then you use isometrics to let it out, to pull out the toxins and to sweat them out, after that is better for you. I can't tell you unless I look at the person and he tries it, and then we watch what happens. So it's not that a cold plunges don't have basic research behind them, or that saunas don't. But when you design how you're going to manage your little machine, your machine likes some things better than others. And so the real big thing, we call it scientific wellness. Use science to predict and prevent. Today, I can prevent most diseases if I test for it early on, and I know what's happening in my body. So we can predict cancers by watching small changes in blood work years before it happens. There's actually a test out there today, which, have you ever heard of the Grail test?
No, I haven't.
Holy Grail test, Galleria Grail. Okay, it's a test that I was involved in funding maybe 15 years ago. That's a predictive test for the top 50 cancers so that you could see before stage 1 that you were going to get a cancer. Now, once you get to stage 1, let's be clear, it's at least 14 to 28 methods and mechanisms in your body change. And then when you go to stage 2, it's exponential, and stage 3. So what do we do when you get cancer? We take things like chemo and we burn everything because we can't target everybody's specific systems. So the key is to get it before you get to stage 1. Now, when I ask most people to go to their doctor and ask about the Grail test, number one answer, I've never heard of it, because our doctors weren't trained in a time when you could actually do preventive medicine. 98% of a GP's job is to find sickness, to find the sickness. So he's looking for sickness. It's too late. You're broke by then. Okay. 100% of what hospitals do, they're great. They're beautiful people. They're there to save you. It's to treat sickness. But no
Right.
one is thinking, how do I avoid sickness? Because that's very subjective and it's very ambiguous, and there really isn't something to do it. But they're thinking there's no way to do this. But there are tests today that can show you you're starting to decline, right? And that's when you should pay attention, and you should do everything you would do when you found out you got cancer. You went and you researched, you went to the internet, you found your brother who was a med student, and then you went to a specialist. Now you're engaged and trying to figure out how to save yourself. If you find out you're getting closer to diabetes, we need to tell you so that you can start that participation early. Predict, prevent, participate, and then personalize. That's the way to do it. And there's 5 categories in the predict, prevent that you can actually have an impact. And they're very, very easy categories. Everyone will recognize them. And when I tell you how easy it is, you're going to be astonished that you don't do it, right? The number one in correlate to health span, and you've heard about this, is that having one dyadic relationship in your life. And a dyadic relationship is, and you only have to have one. If you have more than one, that's great. They can change. You could have one with one person and have one with another person. A dyadic relationship is that someone is not just empathetic to you, they not just care about you, and you feel that they care about you, but you actually mentally believe that by word or deed, they will take action if you're in trouble. Now, think about that. That's compassion. You believe they're compassionate to you. But in order for that transaction to happen, not only do they have to show you that they care, that they're empathetic, you actually have to believe that they do. And it's that trigger that it's in your mind. That's why, things like the placebo effect work. When you trust your doctor, the drugs work better because you believe. So what I'm telling you is it's not just good enough to have people care about you. You have to be vulnerable enough, and you have to accept it, and you have to believe that they're going to be there for you. That's why married people live longer. Okay. That, when you really break down the thing. Now, not if some people wish they didn't live longer because they're married and they wish they were dead, but they live longer because they actually believe there's someone there that's going to be there for them. So number one is this idea that mind body actually makes a difference, and that humans are the only animal that has a parasympathetic immune system and a vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve in your body, and it connects your brain to your mouth, to your stomach, to your heart, to all your organs. And that brain saying that person cares about me sends a signal to your body that I feel safe and I feel good, and I'll bring down the stress, and my immune system will function better, and I will kill illness before it gets me. There is not a drug in the world that we will ever create that isn't more effective than your body killing things that are trying to get you. And so what's happened is we are looking outward when it's not bad. Look, if I'm sick and I need an operation, I will tell you, I'll take one. If there's a drug that's going to save my life, I'll take it. But the first line of defense, as we say in the military, is that you have to have a strong immune system, right? And what is a strong immune system? Oh, wait a minute. That's the other side of the coin. I don't have it working all the time, so it's not tired. I don't have chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation means your immune system is compromised. Okay, so number one is that you believe this. Right underneath that is connection. Humans are the only animal in the world that can actually imagine connection, which means that I live in the forest and there's 2 animals, and they know that animal's mean. I'll stay away from him. He's the alpha, I'm the beta. We eat the same food. I know who that animal is. Animals, you can't have a relationship unless there's a physical connection. Humans, I can say, Adam, dude, I read your stuff. I love what you're doing. You make me happy because you're trying to help people. Now we have a connection. I feel closer to you. Animals can't do that. Okay, we can, which means we have a superpower that if you actually smile, as all the studies have said, if you smile 10 times a day at people, that actually helps you live longer. Why? Because you're connected. Think about that, Dunbar's number, that research that was done that says you can connect to 150 people a day. If you look at it, connection doesn't just have to be intimacy. It can be kindness. So you can actually make connection happen anytime you want. So really, in the first category, in the military, we call it a force multiplier. If I have this skill Everything else I'm going to tell you, the other four things, I can multiply by 10 to 20 times. If you don't have this, you're going to die anyway. Okay. Because people, the number one killer of people over 65 is loneliness. The number one cause of mental illness for people under 25 is loneliness. It's loneliness. We are designed both as a system that has a parasympathetic nervous system. So our brain, how we feel, and our body, how we feel, have to be connected, which means if we don't feel good about how we're connected to the rest of the world, whether it's nature or other people, we are compromised. So once you believe me there, now let's move on to the other four are really, they're straightforward. You've heard them before. You have a machine, it's a system. First, you need to know what you're going to put, fuel you're going to put in the machine. Okay, I've owned two dieting companies in my lifetime. I didn't know this back then, a little embarrassing, but the fact is that there is no diet that I could tell you is good for you unless I understand what's good for you, right? And I can't understand what's good for you unless you do a CGM, so I can see what foods drive your sugar. I can do a food sensitivity test so I can see which foods you're allergic to, right? Now, there are rules of thumb. Calorie restriction works. Why does it work? Because their systems have been designed to be stressed out. And so that makes them stronger. Okay. So if I go down to 600 calories a day, the longevity, not you'll feel great. Longevity, you'll live 10 years longer. That's what autophagy is. Go look up autophagy and you'll find restrict your calories to 600 calories a day. Now, you'll live 10 more years, but you'll feel like it's 20 and you'll hate your life. Okay. No one wants to eat 600 calories a day. So what have we done? Calorie restriction does work. So the number of calories you eat is important. And for some people, fasting works because it rests your body and you have a smaller eating window. So you get a secondary effect, you reduce calories. The problem with Americans, and one of the key drivers of why we have all these chronic inflammation things, is we eat too much. Okay, we eat the wrong things. Now, why is that happening to us? Because we hate friggin' Russians. That's why it's happening to us. Because in 1950, the CIA and the NSA and the government went to the Department of Agriculture and said, those Russians are going to take over the world. How do we increase the amount of crops we have in the U.S. so we can export food because people will like us and they won't like the Russians? Okay, so if you look at it, in the 1950s, we quadrupled wheat, corn, and soy, and we started exporting it. And we're good guys, and we're Americans, and we love people. The problem is unintended consequences. When you quadruple the amount of wheats and carbohydrates that we produce in the United States, it seeped out because we're entrepreneurs. I got all this extra food. So calorie induction went from 2,000 calories a day to 3. So we've increased by a third our carbohydrate calories in the United States. The second thing that happened to us was the fight between fat and sugar. In the early 1980s, it became the sugar companies said we shouldn't be considered calories because you don't know how they're going to be absorbed. So, for instance, sometimes muscles absorb the calories, and they're not negative, right? Muscles absorb 60% of your calories, which is why people tell you build muscle mass as you get older, because again, you'll reduce your glucose intake into your bloodstream and you won't have chronic inflammation. Sounds like the same theme, right? So when you look at it, the sugar companies won. We started eating more candy and more soft drinks, and fat became the devil. Non-fat, no low fat. It turns out that fat isn't the devil, that it really doesn't matter. That the fact is that not only did we stop eating fat and start eating sugar, but because foods don't taste as good when you take the fat out, they just don't taste good. We don't like them, and so we inject sugar. Of processed foods, 93% of processed foods include injected sugar. So they'll taste good. What does that do? Oh my God, more sugar in your system, more chronic inflammation. So those two things in the United States are why we die for 14 years when the average in the world is they don't start declining until the last 5 years of their life. But you can change that by calorie restriction, try to stay away from processed foods, and then you have to find out what specifically your body wants. For some people, they can eat all the carbohydrates they want. For other people, like me, they turn to simple sugars right away. I have to be very careful. So the fuel you take is number one. I'll just do one more, and the other ones are quick. Exercise. All right. We've been fooled again. The diet business tells you should be on a diet. They can't even tell you what you should be on a diet until I know what I'm allergic to, right? Exercise business says one of the companies I own right now, we had 1,800 gyms we ran for people, right? I love gyms. I love exercise. I love going to the gym. But the fact is that I can't tell you what exercise program is good for you, again, until you do a couple things. One is, the most important thing is that humans weren't designed to exercise. Just like we were designed to stress out and not eat a lot, we were designed to save calories. So when I used to go to the gym, they go, "Oh, you got to change your routine. You're not building muscle. You need muscle confusion." Why? Because my body was saying I'm getting more efficient every time. Why? So it wouldn't burn as much calories. And so the reality is, moving 15 minutes every hour is more important than 3 hours of exercise a day. So if you don't move 15 minutes every hour, all the toxins sit in your organs and your joints and destroy your system and cause chronic inflammation, arthritis, diabetes. Okay. That's why when you hear on the news, they say sitting is the new smoking. Yes, because if you don't move 15 minutes every hour, your body wasn't designed to do that. The second thing is high intensity good? Oh, I hear that. I just saw a thing on TV. Yeah, high intensity. We do need high intensity. Why? It's going to be a common theme. Your body wants to stress out every day. It wants to stress out around fuel, and it wants to stress out to see if the system is working. You need 10 minutes of HIT a day. Not more. If you do more, that's okay. And you need 10 minutes of LIT. Why? Because if you don't bring your system up and you don't bring your system down, your hormones and your system doesn't balance itself every day. So it sits in the middle in that gray area, and it grinds and causes chronic inflammation, right? So if I had to tell people to do two things, I would say, look, you move 15 minutes every hour and jump rope 3 minutes 3 times, and then sit in a dark room for 10 minutes and just don't listen to music, don't do anything. That would actually be more important than exercise. Now, on top of that is exercise. There are a lot of exercises that are good for you, but I've got to figure out what it is. So you have to try different things, right? And that's where you can get into also, cold plunges versus saunas. I put that into the exercise. The third category is maintenance. I got a factory. I put fuel in the front of it. Good fuel. I got a factory. The machines they're moving every day, and they're getting high intensity once a day and low intensity one day. Now I have to maintain my machines. It turns out that everyone knows that sleep's important. Okay. Also, human touch is important because your body responds to human touch. So being touched every day matters. So whether it's a massage or it's intimacy or whatever you want to do, or it's hugging someone, touch matters. Right. But in the maintenance cycle for sleep, which is the major driver, it's not number of hours. We've been saying this for a long time, and all the studies are coming out. It's when you call in the crew. If you had a factory and the crew actually was called in last minute at 1 o'clock one night and 7 o'clock the night, and they weren't efficient, your maintenance crew can be 20% more efficient if you go to bed at the same time. We shouldn't be setting an alarm to get up. We should be setting an alarm to go to bed. So 5 days a week, you find your chronotype and you go to bed at the same time 5 days a week, you'll get 20% better sleep. So even if I only slept 6 hours, I'm getting much more than 6 hours. Now, the secondary thing is most people, less than 1% of people can not do damage in less than 6 hours. You can survive because your brain is very powerful, but you can't actually help your body. So again, figure out where your chronotype is, figure out when you go to bed every night, and then try to get between 7 and 8, depending on who you are, right? And then you can take a look at your Aura ring and say how much deep and how much REM, and you can start adjusting. Deep sleep tends to come at the beginning, right? So if you know what time you're supposed to go to bed, those when you get deep sleep. If you get up too early, you miss out on REM sleep. Deep sleep repairs physical, REM sleep repairs mental. But again, what did we say? If you have bad mental, your brain actually connects to your body. You have bad physical because it's stressed out. It doesn't strip out the emotional tags, right? And store it in the right places through the executive function. And that causes low level stress. Okay. The final thing, and this is the easiest of all of them because we all know this, is where you live matters, the exozone. If you live in Beijing and you're breathing in pollution, you got a problem. Okay, what most people, people realize, okay, smoking's bad for me, air pollution's bad for me. If one of the ways the toxins get in your body is your lungs, there's two other ways it gets in your body that people don't think about. What's the largest organ in your body?
Your skin.
Your skin. So guess what? Where do the toxins get in? They get in through your skin. Where does most of the contact of your body come from? With your clothes. So when you go to the washing machine and you pour in that thing that smells really good and it's not organic, there's 71,000 chemicals that are certified in the United States, but none of them are certified that over time they don't actually screw up your system. Okay, they're basically certified they don't kill you. So if you're not looking at your washing machine liquid, and even more important, the majority of dryer sheets are pure poison because they don't make your clothes softer. They put lotion on your clothes so that they slide across you, and then that lotion gets in your skin. It's just pure chemicals. So using dryer sheets it's like going to Beijing and breathing in pollution. The final area that you get exposed, where else would you get exposed to toxins? What you put in your mouth. Now, we did talk about food, so don't do processed foods because there's a lot of bad things in there. But you wash your dishes and then you put this rinse stuff on there. And then you have a glass of water and you drink it in. Do you think that exposure to whatever chemical is, even if it's not toxic in one dose, what happens is you screw up your system. So I'll leave you with, this is pretty simple. We are a system. Everyone is different. If you're not the quarterback of your system, your doctor's just a coach or a trainer.
Those are some incredibly key points. You listed 5 major things here. The first one, I think, this relationship piece, the dyadic relationship, somebody is compassionate about you, they care about you, you care about them. That drops our sense of insecurity as a human being. And insecurity is stress. It creates that inflammation, the number one thing you're talking about. The second one, fuel. What foods drive you? I love that. Exercise, of course, maintenance, which we all know sleep is incredibly important, and that human touch. I like this key point that you said, Blair. Don't set an alarm to wake up, set an alarm to go to bed so that our systems are on the same routine every single day. And then, of course, number 5, where you live matters. That's incredibly important. You mentioned Beijing, the pollution, maybe LA, things like that, versus how we live, fresh air, as well as the chemicals we put in our body. What do you put in your laundry detergent? What touches your skin, the lotions, things like that, all the chemicals. Those are some easy things for us to all work on. Thank you, Blair, so much. You've been such an inspiration to us, and thanks for being on Start With a Win.